There exists within you at this very moment a force more powerful than any circumstance, more enduring than any obstacle, more transformative than any external condition. Yet most souls live their entire existence never accessing this inner dynamo of unlimited potential. What if I told you that every fear you've ever experienced was not imposed upon you by life, but carefully cultivated within you through a series of choices you may not even remember making? That every limitation you accept, every boundary you refuse to cross, every dream you've abandoned was the result of decisions made in moments when you chose the familiar over the possible? Right now, someone listening to these words is living in a prison of their own construction. The bars are made of excuses, the walls built from past failures, the locks forged from the opinions of others, yet the key to freedom has been in their pocket all along. That key is the recognition that in every single moment you possess the absolute power to choose your response to whatever life presents. Think about the last time you felt genuinely afraid. Not the healthy respect for danger that keeps you from walking into traffic, but that paralyzing fear that keeps you from pursuing what you truly want. In that moment, what were you really afraid of? Failure? Or was it something deeper? The fear that if you truly committed yourself, if you gave everything you had, you might still fall short of your own expectations. Here's what most people never understand. Fear is not your enemy. Fear is simply information. It's your inner guardian attempting to protect you, but often protecting the wrong things. Fear protects your comfort zone when it should be protecting your potential. It safeguards your current identity when it should be securing your future self. It preserves what is familiar when it should be preparing you for what is possible. The moment you recognize this, everything changes, because suddenly you realize that courage is not the absence of fear, it's the decision to act in spite of fear. It's the choice to trust your vision more than your current circumstances. It's the commitment to become the person your dreams require, regardless of who you think you are today. Consider the story of a woman who spent 15 years in a job that slowly drained her soul. Every morning, she told herself she was being practical, responsible, smart. She had bills to pay, security to maintain, expectations to meet. But late at night, in those quiet moments when the masks come off and truth whispers its uncomfortable secrets, she knew she was dying a slow death of unfulfilled potential. The turning point came not in a moment of inspiration, but in a moment of exhaustion. She was sitting in her car after another soul-crushing day, staring at the building that had become her comfortable prison, when a simple question entered her mind. If I continue living this way for the next 15 years, what will be left of me? The answer terrified her more than any risk she could imagine taking. She realized that the safe path was actually the most dangerous path of all, because it guaranteed that she would reach the end of her life, having never discovered what she was truly capable of becoming. That night, she made a decision that changed everything. Not a decision to quit her job immediately, that would have been reckless, but a decision to stop being a victim of her circumstances and start being the architect of her future. She chose to begin preparing for the life she wanted while still living the life she had. What happened next illustrates a principle that governs all human transformation. The moment you stop asking, what if it doesn't work, and start asking, what if it does, the entire universe begins to reorganize itself around your new possibility. This is where most people miss the profound truth about personal power. They believe that circumstances create their choices, when in reality, choices create circumstances. They think that they'll change when their situation improves, not understanding that their situation will improve when they change. Every single day you make approximately 35,000 decisions. Most of them seem insignificant. What to eat, what to wear, which route to take to work. But hidden within these seemingly minor choices are the building blocks of your destiny. Because every choice you make is actually answering a deeper question: who am I becoming? When you choose to complain about a situation rather than change it, you're choosing to be someone who sees themselves as powerless. When you choose to blame others for your problems, you're choosing to be someone who believes that life happens to them rather than through them. When you choose to avoid a difficult conversation, you're choosing to be someone who values comfort over growth. But here's the liberating truth. If choices have created your current reality, then different choices can create a different reality. This is not positive thinking or wishful dreaming. This is the fundamental law that governs all human experience. The question becomes, what prevents you from making the choices that would create the life you truly want? Why do intelligent, capable people often choose patterns that lead them away from their stated goals? The answer lies in understanding the three levels at which human beings operate. The first level is reactive, where you simply respond to whatever happens to you, allowing external circumstances to dictate your internal state. Most people live their entire lives at this level, bouncing from one situation to another like a pinball, never realizing they have any control over the game. The second level is responsive, where you recognize that while you cannot control what happens to you, you can control how you respond to what happens to you. This is where personal power begins to emerge, where you start to see that you have options even in difficult situations. But the third level is where true transformation occurs. This is the creative level, where you stop reacting to life and start creating life, where you stop asking what is happening to me and start asking what am I creating, where you recognize that you are not just the victim of your story, but the author of your story. At this level, fear transforms from an enemy to an advisor. Instead of avoiding what frightens you, you begin to investigate what your fears are trying to protect. Instead of running from challenges, you begin to see them as opportunities to discover strengths you didn't know you possessed. Here's what this looks like in practical terms. A person operating at the reactive level says, I can't pursue my dreams because I don't have enough money. A person at the responsive level says, I don't have enough money yet, but I can start taking steps toward my dreams while I work on improving my financial situation. A person at the creative level says, what if my current financial situation is exactly what I need to develop the resourcefulness and creativity that will serve me when I achieve my dreams? The difference between these perspectives is not just philosophical, it's practical. The reactive person remains stuck. The responsive person makes gradual progress. But the creative person discovers possibilities that wouldn't have existed if their circumstances had been different. This brings us to a crucial understanding about the nature of growth itself. Every challenge you face is actually asking you a question. The question is always the same. How committed are you to becoming who you say you want to become? When you encounter an obstacle, life is not punishing you. It's testing your commitment. It's asking if you're willing to develop the qualities necessary to handle the success you claim to want. Because here's what most people don't realize. You cannot have a better life without becoming a better person. The external always reflects the internal. This is why so many people who win the lottery end up broke within a few years. They acquired the external trappings of wealth without developing the internal qualities that create and sustain wealth. The universe gave them exactly what they could handle based on who they were, not who they wanted to become. But when you commit to becoming the person your dreams require, everything changes. You stop asking life to be easier and start asking yourself to be stronger. You stop waiting for your circumstances to improve and start improving your ability to handle whatever circumstances arise. What would happen if you approached every challenge in your life with this question, what is this situation trying to teach me that I need to know to become who I'm meant to be? What if every difficulty was actually a training ground, preparing you for opportunities you can't yet see? The woman in our story understood this. She realized that her years in the job she hated weren't wasted, they were preparation. She had developed skills, built relationships, and learned valuable lessons about what she didn't want. More importantly, she had developed the inner strength that comes from enduring difficult circumstances without becoming bitter. When she finally made the transition to work that aligned with her values and utilized her natural talents, she brought with her a depth of character and a breadth of experience that made her immediately valuable in ways she never could have predicted. The very experiences she thought were holding her back became the foundation for her breakthrough. This illustrates one of the most powerful principles of human development. There are no wasted experiences, only experiences you haven't yet learned to use. Every situation you've endured, every challenge you've faced, every mistake you've made has been developing qualities within you that will serve you in ways you cannot yet comprehend. But here's the critical point. These qualities only serve you if you choose to extract the lessons rather than nurse the wounds. If you choose to focus on what you've gained rather than what you've lost. If you choose to see yourself as someone who has been strengthened by adversity rather than damaged by it. This choice to see yourself as someone who grows stronger through challenges rather than someone who is diminished by them is perhaps the most important choice you will ever make. Because this choice determines not just how you interpret your past, but how you approach your future. When you truly understand that you have the power to choose your response to any situation, that you can decide what any experience means, that you can determine who you become regardless of what happens to you, you begin to live with a level of confidence that others mistake for fearlessness. But it's not the absence of fear, it's the presence of something stronger than fear. It's the presence of purpose. It's the presence of a vision so compelling that it pulls you forward despite your doubts. It's the presence of a commitment so deep that it transforms every obstacle into a stepping stone. This is where true power lies, not in the absence of challenges, but in your response to challenges. Not in the elimination of fear, but in your willingness to act despite fear. Not in the guarantee of success, but in your commitment to become the kind of person who deserves success.
As we prepare to explore how this understanding translates into practical daily action, ask yourself this. If you truly believe that every experience was designed to strengthen you, that every challenge was an opportunity to develop qualities you'll need for your future, that every choice was a chance to become more of who you're meant to be, how would you live differently starting today? The answer to that question is about to become the blueprint for a transformation that will astound you with its power and amaze you with its simplicity. Because once you understand the principles that govern growth, success becomes not a matter of luck or talent, but a natural result of aligned action. A farmer understands something that eludes most seekers of success, that the harvest is determined not in the moment of reaping, but in the months of preparation that preceded the first seed touching soil. While others focus obsessively on the fruit, the wise farmer tends to the roots. While others chase immediate results, the farmer invests in processes that compound over time. While others become frustrated when they don't see instant progress, the farmer trusts in principles that have governed growth since the beginning of time. What if your greatest achievements are not the result of what you do when the world is watching, but what you do when no one else can see? What if success is not about manipulating external circumstances, but about preparing internal conditions that naturally attract the outcomes you desire? Every farmer knows that you cannot plant corn and harvest wheat. You cannot neglect the soil and expect abundant crops. You cannot ignore the seasons and demand results on your timeline. Yet somehow, when it comes to personal development, people expect to bypass these fundamental laws and achieve lasting success through shortcuts and quick fixes. The principle is unforgiving in its consistency. The external harvest always reflects the internal preparation. Show me someone who has built something meaningful and lasting, and I'll show you someone who spent considerable time preparing themselves for that success long before the world recognized their achievements. This preparation happens in 4 distinct phases, and understanding these phases will transform how you approach every goal you set. The first phase is soil preparation, the often unglamorous work of developing the character qualities that can sustain success. Most people skip this phase entirely, which explains why most success is temporary. Think about the last person you saw who achieved something significant and then lost it quickly, whether it was financial success, a relationship, a position of leadership, or a personal achievement. What caused the loss? In almost every case, the external success exceeded the internal preparation. They acquired something they weren't ready to handle. The soil of success is character, and character is developed through small daily choices that no one else notices. The choice to keep your word when it's inconvenient. The choice to do quality work when no one is checking. The choice to maintain your standards when you're tired, stressed, or discouraged. Here's what most people don't realize. These small choices are not just building character, they're building confidence. Real confidence doesn't come from external achievements, it comes from the knowledge that you can trust yourself to do what you say you'll do, regardless of how you feel in the moment. A man decided he wanted to run a marathon. He had never run more than a few miles at a time, was 40 pounds overweight, and hadn't exercised consistently in years. But instead of focusing on the marathon, he focused on becoming the kind of person who could run a marathon. He started with a simple commitment: run for 20 minutes every other day, regardless of distance, weather, or how he felt. For the first month, some days he barely managed a slow jog around the block, but he kept his word to himself. For the second month, he gradually
increased the time and distance. By the 3rd month, something had shifted not just in his physical capacity, but in his identity. He began to see himself as a runner. He started making food choices like a runner would make. He began going to bed earlier like a runner would. He started thinking like someone who takes care of their body. The marathon became inevitable not because he focused on the marathon, but because he focused on becoming the kind of person for whom running a marathon was natural. This illustrates the second phase, seed selection. Not all goals are created equal. Some goals, when pursued, develop qualities within you that serve you in multiple areas of life. Other goals, even when achieved, leave you essentially unchanged as a person. The goals worth pursuing are those that require you to become someone different in order to achieve them. These goals function like seeds. They contain within them not just the potential for the specific outcome you want, but the potential for you to develop into someone capable of achieving many things you cannot currently achieve. The man who committed to running didn't just develop physical fitness, he developed discipline, consistency, the ability to push through discomfort, the capacity to keep long-term commitments, and the confidence that comes from proving to yourself that you can change. These qualities served him in his career, his relationships, and every other area of his life. Most people choose goals based on what they want to have. Wise people choose goals based on who they want to become.
Because here's what experience teaches: you can lose what you have, but you can never lose who you've become. The third phase is consistent tending. Every farmer knows that planting the seed is just the beginning. The crop requires daily attention: watering, weeding, protecting from pests, adjusting to weather conditions. Miss too many days and the crop fails regardless of how good the soil was or how carefully you selected the seeds. Your personal development requires the same consistent attention. You cannot develop discipline by being disciplined occasionally. You cannot build character through periodic effort. You cannot strengthen your mind by reading one good book. These qualities are developed through daily practices repeated over months and years. But here's where most people sabotage themselves. They try to change everything at once. They want to start exercising, eating better, reading more, saving money, improving their relationships, and advancing their career all in the same week. This approach guarantees failure because it violates a fundamental principle of growth. Sustainable change happens gradually, then suddenly. Choose one area of your life where small daily improvements would create significant long-term results. Commit to one simple action you can perform every single day for the next 90 days. Make it so simple that you cannot fail to do it, even on your worst day. If you want to become more knowledgeable, commit to reading 10 pages every day. If you want to improve your health, commit to walking for 15 minutes every day. If you want to strengthen your relationships, commit to having one meaningful conversation every day. If you want to advance your career, commit to learning one new skill-related thing every day. The power is not in the specific action. The power is in proving to yourself that you can make and keep a commitment to yourself. Once you establish this pattern in one area, you can gradually expand it to other areas. But if you cannot keep a small daily commitment to yourself, you will never keep a large long-term commitment to yourself. This brings us to the fourth phase: patient waiting. Every farmer understands that there is a time between planting and harvest when nothing visible seems to be happening. The seed has been planted, the soil is good, the daily care is consistent, but there is no evidence above ground that anything is working. This is where most people quit. They plant the seed on Monday and expect to see the fruit by Friday. When they don't see immediate results, they conclude that the process isn't working, and they abandon their efforts just before the breakthrough would have occurred.
Nature operates on its own timeline, not yours. The oak tree grows slowly for years before it becomes strong enough to withstand the storms that would uproot a faster-growing tree. The river gradually carves the canyon through persistence applied over time, not through force applied in a moment. Your personal development follows the same pattern. The changes that last are the ones that happen gradually, imperceptibly, until one day you realize you've become someone completely different from who you were. The confidence that matters is the kind that builds slowly through repeated proof that you can trust yourself. But while you're waiting for the harvest, you must continue tending the crop. This requires a different kind of strength. The strength to persist when you cannot see progress. The strength to maintain your standards when you don't feel like it. The strength to trust the process when your emotions are demanding immediate results. This is where character reveals itself. Anyone can maintain their commitments when they're motivated, inspired, and seeing rapid progress. But what do you do when motivation fades, inspiration disappears, and progress seems to have stopped? The answer to that question determines whether you harvest success or abandon the field just before the breakthrough. Character is the foundation that supports everything else you want to build in your life. Without character, success becomes a burden rather than a blessing. With character, even failure becomes a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. Think of character as the foundation of a building. If the foundation is strong, you can build as high as you want and the structure will remain stable. If the foundation is weak, even a modest structure will eventually collapse under its own weight. Most people want to build impressive structures without investing in strong foundations. They want the income without developing the work ethic. They want the relationship without developing the character qualities that make them worth being in a relationship with. They want the recognition without developing the competence that deserves recognition. But when you commit to building a strong foundation first, something remarkable happens. You become the kind of person who naturally attracts opportunities, relationships, and circumstances that align with who you've become. Success stops being something you chase and becomes something that finds you. This foundation is built through 4 primary supports, and each support must be solid for the structure to remain stable. The first support is integrity, the alignment between what you believe, what you say, and what you do. When these 3 elements are in harmony, you generate what we might call internal coherence, and this coherence creates a magnetic quality that draws positive circumstances into your life. The second support is discipline, the ability to do what needs to be done regardless of how you feel in the moment.
Discipline is not about forcing yourself to do things you hate. It's about developing the capacity to act based on your commitments rather than your emotions. The third support is persistence, the willingness to continue when progress seems slow or when obstacles appear overwhelming. Persistence is not about stubbornly repeating the same ineffective actions. It's about maintaining your commitment to the outcome while remaining flexible about the methods. The fourth support is growth mindset, the belief that your abilities and qualities can be developed through effort and learning. People with a growth mindset see challenges as opportunities to develop strength, failures as information for improvement, and effort as the path to mastery. These four supports work together to create what we might call unshakable confidence, not the arrogant confidence that comes from thinking you're better than others, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever life presents to you. Now here's where this understanding becomes practical. Life operates according to predictable patterns, and when you understand these patterns, you can position yourself to maximize opportunities and minimize unnecessary suffering. The first pattern is the cycle of preparation and opportunity. Opportunities have a way of appearing when you're prepared for them and disappearing when you're not. Most people think opportunities are random, but they're actually the natural result of preparation meeting circumstance. When you consistently prepare yourself, developing skills, building character, expanding your knowledge, strengthening your network, you create conditions that naturally attract opportunities. But preparation alone is not enough. You must also develop the ability to recognize opportunities when they appear. The second pattern is the cycle of challenge and growth. Every level of success brings new challenges, and every challenge overcome leads to new levels of capability. Most people resist challenges because they're uncomfortable, not realizing that challenges are the mechanism through which growth occurs. When you understand this pattern, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this developing in me?" You begin to see difficulties not as punishment, but as preparation for opportunities you cannot yet see. The third pattern is the cycle of input and output. What you consistently put into your mind, body, and spirit determines what you're capable of producing in your life. Most people are casual about their inputs and then frustrated with their outputs. If you want to produce excellence, you must consume excellence. If you want to think clearly, you must feed your mind with clear thinking. If you want to feel energetic, you must treat your body like it matters. If you want to maintain hope, you must regularly connect with sources of inspiration. These patterns are not suggestions. They are laws as consistent as gravity. You can choose to work with them or against them, but you cannot choose to ignore them without consequences. When you align your actions with these natural patterns, success becomes less about effort and more about efficiency. You stop fighting against the current and start moving with it. You stop forcing outcomes and start creating conditions that make your desired outcomes inevitable. This is the difference between someone who struggles to achieve modest results and someone who makes significant achievements appear effortless. They're not working harder, they're working in harmony with the principles that govern all growth and achievement. As we prepare to apply these principles to the specific challenges that prevent most people from accessing their full potential, consider this question. If you truly understood that success is the natural result of consistent preparation, that character is the foundation of all lasting achievement, and that working with natural patterns multiplies your efforts, what would you stop doing immediately, and what would you start doing today? The answer to that question will determine whether you continue to be someone who wishes their life were different, or someone who systematically creates the changes they desire to see. Even with this understanding of natural patterns and the power of consistent preparation, there exist within each of us certain internal forces that seem designed to undermine our highest aspirations. These forces are so subtle, so sophisticated in their operation, that most people mistake them for rational thinking rather than recognizing them as elaborate forms of self-sabotage. Right now, as you consider what you would stop doing and what you would start doing to align with these principles, notice what's happening in your mind. Are you already generating reasons why these ideas might not work for you? Are you thinking about all the ways your situation is different, your challenges more complex, your circumstances more difficult than others?
If so, you're witnessing the first saboteur in action, the excuse generator. This internal mechanism is remarkably creative, capable of producing unlimited reasons why you cannot do what you know you should do. It specializes in making the avoidance of growth sound reasonable, practical, even wise. The excuse generator operates on a simple principle. It protects your current identity by providing logical-sounding justifications for not changing. When you consider exercising regularly, it reminds you how busy you are. When you think about starting that business, it calculates all the risks. When you contemplate having that difficult conversation, it explains why now isn't the right time.
But here's what the excuse generator doesn't tell you. Every excuse you accept becomes a vote for who you currently are, rather than who you could become. Every justification for staying the same is actually a decision to remain limited. Every reason you give for not growing is really a choice to keep your potential locked away. How do you recognize when you're making excuses versus when you're making legitimate assessments? The answer lies in the emotion behind the reasoning. Legitimate concerns are accompanied by problem-solving energy. You identify the obstacle and immediately start thinking about how to overcome it. Excuses are accompanied by relief energy. You identify the obstacle and feel satisfied that you now have a reason to avoid the challenge. A woman wanted to start her own consulting business, but consistently found reasons to delay. She needed more experience, more money saved, more connections in the industry, more certainty about the market. Each reason seemed perfectly valid in isolation. But when examined together, they revealed a pattern. She was more committed to avoiding the risk of failure than to creating the possibility of success. The breakthrough came when she stopped asking, "What if it doesn't work?" and started asking, "What will definitely happen if I don't try?" She realized that not pursuing her vision was a guaranteed failure, while pursuing it was simply a risk. In that moment, inaction became more frightening than action, and her excuse generator lost its power over her. This brings us to the second saboteur, the postponement specialist. This internal force acknowledges that you should pursue your goals, just not right now. It's always advocating for delay, suggesting that you wait until conditions are more favorable, until you have more resources, until you feel more confident. The postponement specialist is particularly dangerous because it doesn't oppose your dreams, it just reschedules them indefinitely. It makes procrastination feel like prudence, and delay feel like preparation. It convinces you that someday you'll be ready, someday the timing will be perfect, someday you'll have everything you need to begin. But here's the truth about timing. There is never a perfect time to begin something important. There are only degrees of imperfect timing, and you must choose which imperfect time you'll use to start creating the life you want. Because every day you wait for better conditions is a day when your current conditions become more entrenched, more comfortable, more difficult to change. The third saboteur is perhaps the most insidious, the blame redistributor. This internal mechanism protects you from taking responsibility by ensuring that someone else is always at fault for your circumstances. Your parents didn't give you the right foundation. Your education wasn't adequate. Your boss doesn't appreciate you. The economy is bad. The industry is changing. Other people have advantages you don't have. The blame redistributor is sophisticated enough to find real problems and legitimate disadvantages, then use these as evidence that your success or failure is primarily determined by external factors rather than internal choices. It keeps you focused on what's wrong with the world rather than what you can control about your response to the world. But consider this: if external circumstances were the primary determinant of success, then everyone with similar circumstances would have similar results. Yet we see people from identical backgrounds creating vastly different outcomes. We see individuals overcome extraordinary obstacles, while others are defeated by minor inconveniences. We see some people thrive in challenging conditions while others struggle even when conditions are favorable. The difference is not in their circumstances. The difference is in their relationship with their circumstances. Some people use challenges as reasons to quit. Others use them as fuel for determination. Some people focus on what they lack. Others maximize what they have. Some people wait for perfect conditions. Others create progress with imperfect conditions. Which type of person do you choose to be? Because this choice determines everything else about your experience of life. Now, having identified these internal saboteurs, how do you neutralize their influence? The answer lies in developing what we might call a success mentality, a way of thinking that automatically moves you toward your goals rather than away from them. People with a success mentality think differently about failure. When something doesn't work out as planned, they ask, "What can I learn from this?" rather than "Why did this happen to me?" They see failure as information rather than judgment, as redirection rather than rejection. People with a success mentality think differently about challenges. When they encounter obstacles, they ask, "How can I use this to become stronger?" rather than "How can I avoid this?" They understand that everything worthwhile requires you to become someone capable of handling it. People with a success mentality think differently about other people's success. Instead of feeling threatened or resentful, they study successful people to understand what they can learn and apply. They see other people's achievements as proof of what's possible rather than evidence of what they lack. People with a success mentality think differently about time. They understand that you cannot save time, you can only invest it. They choose to invest their time in activities that compound over time rather than activities that merely fill time. Most importantly, people with a success mentality think differently about themselves. They see themselves as constantly evolving rather than fixed, as capable of learning rather than limited by current knowledge, as responsible for their results rather than victims of their circumstances. This shift in mentality doesn't happen overnight, but it can begin immediately through the implementation of 5 daily practices that gradually reprogram your automatic responses and reshape your fundamental relationship with growth and challenge. The first practice is morning intention setting. How you begin each day determines the quality of everything that follows. Instead of immediately checking messages or diving into reactive tasks, spend the first few minutes of each day connecting with your larger purpose and setting clear intentions for what you want to create. This isn't about making endless to-do lists or overwhelming yourself with unrealistic expectations. It's about choosing the version of yourself you want to be today and identifying the specific actions that align with that choice. It's about starting each day as the author of your experience rather than the victim of your circumstances. The second practice is mental discipline through conscious thought selection. Your mind generates approximately 60,000 thoughts per day, and most of them are repetitions of yesterday's thoughts. If you want different results, you must think different thoughts, and this requires conscious effort. Throughout the day, notice the quality and direction of your thinking. When you catch yourself dwelling on problems without seeking solutions, redirect your attention to possibilities. When you notice yourself focusing on what you cannot control, shift your focus to what you can influence. When you find yourself thinking like a victim, consciously choose to think like someone who has power over their circumstances. The third practice is physical vitality through consistent movement. Your body is the vehicle through which you experience life and pursue your goals. If you neglect your physical condition, you limit your capacity for sustained effort, clear thinking, and emotional resilience. This doesn't require becoming an athlete or spending hours in the gym. It requires making movement a non-negotiable part of your daily routine. 20 minutes of walking, 10 minutes of stretching, 5 minutes of breathing exercises. The specific activity matters less than the consistency of the commitment. The fourth practice is emotional mastery through response training. Your emotions are not random events that happen to you, they are responses you can learn to influence through practice. When you encounter a challenging situation, instead of immediately reacting from your emotions, pause and ask, how would the person I'm becoming respond to this situation? This simple question creates space between stimulus and response, allowing you to choose your reaction rather than defaulting to automatic patterns. Over time, this practice develops what we might call emotional fitness, the ability to maintain your center regardless of external turbulence. The fifth practice is spiritual connection through gratitude and contribution. Success without meaning leads to emptiness, and achievement without contribution leads to isolation. Daily practices that connect you to something larger than your immediate concerns provide both perspective and power. This might involve expressing gratitude for what you have while working toward what you want. It might involve serving others while pursuing your own goals. It might involve reflecting on how your personal growth contributes to something meaningful beyond yourself. These 5 practices work together to create what we might call compound transformation. Each practice individually creates positive changes, but together they create a synergistic effect that accelerates your development in ways that surprise even those who implement them consistently. But here's the critical point. These practices only work if you work them. Knowledge without application is merely entertainment. Understanding without implementation is simply intellectual exercise. You cannot think your way into a new way of living. You must live your way into a new way of thinking. So where do you begin? You begin with the smallest possible step in the right direction. Choose one of these 5 practices and commit to implementing it for the next 7 days. Make it so simple that you cannot fail to do it even on your most challenging day. If you choose morning intention setting, commit to spending just 3 minutes each morning clarifying your purpose for the day. If you choose mental discipline, commit to redirecting your thoughts just once each day when you notice negative patterns. If you choose physical vitality, commit to just 5 minutes of movement daily. If you choose emotional mastery, commit to pausing before reacting in just one challenging situation each day. If you choose spiritual connection, commit to identifying just one thing you're grateful for each evening. The power is not in the complexity of the practice. The power is in the consistency of the commitment. Because every time you keep a small promise to yourself, you build the confidence necessary to keep larger promises. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you develop the strength necessary for greater challenges. Every time you act in alignment with your values despite your emotions, you become someone who can be trusted with greater opportunities. But you must begin today. Not when you feel ready. Not when conditions are perfect. Not when you have more time or energy or resources. Today. Because every day you postpone becoming who you're meant to be is a day when that person remains a stranger to you. The force within you that we spoke of at the beginning, that power more enduring than any obstacle, more transformative than any external condition, is not some mystical energy that might awaken someday.
It's the accumulation of aligned choices made consistently over time. It's the compound result of small actions repeated daily. It's the inevitable outcome of refusing to accept limitation as permanent. You now understand that fear is simply information, that challenges are opportunities for development, that your response to circumstances matters more than the circumstances themselves. You now know that success is the natural result of internal preparation, that character is the foundation of all lasting achievement, that working with natural patterns multiplies your efforts. The question that remains is not whether you can transform your life, the question is whether you will. The principles are available to everyone, but they only work for those who work them. The path is clear to anyone who chooses to see it, but it only leads somewhere for those who choose to walk it. What will you choose? Will you choose to remain someone who knows what they should do, but continues to delay doing it? Or will you choose to become someone who bridges the gap between understanding and action, between intention and implementation, between who you are and who you're capable of becoming? The choice is yours. The moment is now. The force within you is waiting.